Hello again. I'm sure that it's very wrong of me and quite possibly an indication of my immoral and degenerate character, but I gain the keenest enjoyment from listening to people tell extravagant lies. Deliberate lies, that is, that they know very well to be false. This kind of thing often goes hand in hand with hypocrisy and self-righteousness, and I get pleasure from witnessing those as well. There is, to my mind, something quite delightful about the sight of men and women telling what we used to call whoppers when I was young. They, this is especially so when they're doing it in what they think is a good cause. Pious perjury of this kind is, of course, very common these days when progressive and well-meaning people are justifying the tsunami of immigrants to this country and explaining why there's nothing new about the phenomenon, no reason to be alarmed. We saw this when 50p coins were issued with the slogan, "Diversity built Britain." It was an obvious and palpable lie, and yet how many people dared call it out? The BBC are experts at this game, and I came across an enormously entertaining example from their website this morning. It's a news report by somebody called Ross Atkins, and it's about tackling illegal immigration, or migration as the BBC call it. The piece begins with a brief account of the village of Manston in Kent, which of course used to have an airfield nearby, RAF Manston. Here is what the presenter says after having talked about the village of Manston. Next door is the airfield, and because of that, Manston has been welcoming new arrivals for years. In the 20s, Oxford students arrived for pilot training. In the 50s, US servicemen used it as a base for carrying out drills. Now, Manston Airfield is hosting new arrivals again. Tell me, have you in all your life ever heard such dishonesty? The BBC presenter is really comparing students from Oxford University spending a few weeks at the base learning how to fly to the tens of thousands of Albanians, Syrians, Iraqis and Afghans who are now fetching up in that part of Kent. This is simply marvellous. Of course, this is all of a piece with a wonderful piece of deception, which may be summed up as there have always been immigrants to Britain. We are a nation of immigrants, in fact. The way that this game is played is that people talk vaguely about the Roman occupation of Britain, the coming of the Saxons, the Norman conquest, and perhaps the French Huguenots. Then they say, "So you see, there's nothing new about immigration. We have always had immigration to Britain." This is such breathtaking dishonesty that it's hard to know really where to begin. Perhaps 200,000 Romans came to live in Britain over the course of the Roman governance of the province. Add to that about the same number of Saxons, well, maybe a bit more, who knows, over the course of 150 years. And then 8,000 Normans who arrived a few centuries later. Gosh, the number of immigrants is really piling up, isn't it? We've topped 400,000 so far over the course of 1,000 years. That's about as many as have arrived in this country in the last 18 months. You see the difference there in the scale of immigration. Something over 400,000 in the course of 1,000 years, something over 400,000 in the course of a year and a half. Then there were the Huguenots in the 18th century. About 100,000 of them came to this country from France. That's pretty much it on mass immigration until the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The current situation is that 1 person in 6 living in Britain was born abroad. At least 10 million foreigners have come to live in this country. More immigrants have entered Britain in the last 25 years than during the course of the last 2,000 years. Nobody disputes that, and everybody knows really that the nature of immigration has changed massively and that nothing like it has ever before been known in this country. But still, the polite pretense is maintained that it is business as usual and that we are a nation of immigrants. Combined with some debates which I've been attempting to have on another YouTube channel, it's one dedicated to denouncing me and having me purged from YouTube. This drives me to a disturbing conclusion. The people who disagree with what I say here tell an awful lot of lies, and they make things up wholesale, not only about history, but about me personally. The BBC too, as I showed earlier, are playing the same game. When I find that those disagreeing with me always resort to silly lies and constantly use insults and falsehoods rather than facts and figures and truthful argument, it suggests to me that their point of view must be inherently weak. When one is correct and debating honestly, then there's no need to tell lies or try to have your opponent silenced. This all suggests strongly that the position of those people is so feeble that ordinary conversation and discussion will not be enough to prove your point. It rather makes me think that most of those who criticise me are crafty fools. That does not, of course, mean that I am right, merely that so far those who claim that I am wrong have made a pretty poor show of it. Perhaps this will change in the future, but so far the ideas which were advanced, which appear to undermine my own views, turn out to be pretty worthless and clearly without any value. I am, of course, open to any genuine and honest disagreements, but I'm not waiting with bated breath for these.